Welcome to Knox County Schools Summer Task for English Language Arts. My name is Landon Harless, and I am an English teacher at Hardin Valley Academy. I will be here with you for Writing Workshop 1, Writing Process, Stages, and Strategies. This is the first task for English 1 through 4, and depending on which grade level you're at, you will continue with Workshops 2, 3, and 4. Our hope is that by completing these tasks, you will be better prepared for English class once school resumes. I hope that you've had a chance to work your way through Writing Workshop 1 and that in this video I will be able to answer questions and provide needed clarification that would be helpful to you. For this workshop, our learning targets are to produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to the task, audience, and purpose. We will develop and strengthen writing as needed by planning, revising, editing, rewriting, or trying a new approach, focusing on addressing what is most significant for a specific purpose and audience. In the workshop, they describe writing as a recursive process. That's what they mean by these two targets with the editing, revising, and so forth. It's an ongoing process. We will also develop command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage when writing or speaking, and demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English capitalization, punctuation, and spelling when writing. Additional learning targets are to apply knowledge of language, to understand how language functions in different contexts, to make effective choices for meaning or style, and to comprehend more fully when reading or listening. Finally, we will initiate and participate effectively in a range of collaborative discussions with diverse partners on high school level topics, texts, and issues, building on others' ideas and expressing our own clearly and persuasively. Since we are not completing these workshops in the classroom, that last learning target will rely on you finding someone to have discussions with, and hopefully you'll be able to do that with friends or family members. In this workshop, we will be looking at a sample student writing, and we will be reading that writing as a writer. So let's take a look at the workshop itself. And explore the writing process. You are asked to consider the questions number 1 and 2 at the bottom of page 1. And I have answered question 1, so I want to offer that answer to you and invite you to compare it to your own answer. Number 1, what is your writing process? Describe the stages you go through from beginning to end to publish a piece of writing. One possible answer might be, when I have a writing task, I usually begin by brainstorming what I want to say. Then I develop my thoughts into a thesis statement and try to come up with at least 3 supporting ideas. I then write a draft based on that basic outline, put it aside for a while, and then return to it to revise and edit. Your answer may be similar to that or different. Every writer has their own process, but it's important to consider what that process might be depending on the situation. Number 2 asks us to define the traditional stages of the writing process listed on the next page in random order, and to brainstorm the role of the writer within each stage of the writing process. Again, I invite you to consider the answers that I am providing here as possible responses and compare to what you have put. For sharing and responding, potential answers include: writers seek response from peers and the teacher to guide choices in revision. Writers evaluate the response and make the appropriate revision choices. Writers listen to the writing of others and offer suggestions, share techniques and strategies, and encourage the writers. This speaks to being a part of a writing community, which is always helpful, particularly if you are doing creative writing. For pre-writing, potential responses would be: writers consider what they already know and need to know in order to guide the exploration of a topic. Writers consider their purpose and goals for writing. identify possible audiences, and understand how genre guides decision-making. Writers generate, select, connect, and organize information and ideas. These are all possible responses for the writer's role in pre-writing. For editing, potential answers include writers review the draft multiple times to edit for conventions, or writers proofread and consult resources to correct errors in spelling, capitalization, and punctuation. For publishing, you might say something like, writers create publishable text that is properly formatted for the appropriate genre and engages an audience. Or, writers explore publication opportunities to share their work with an appropriate audience. For publishing, we may be considering the formatting of an MLA paper or what we call an authentic audience, which would be a blog or website. Writers use strategies such as adding, deleting, rearranging, and substituting to refine text, to provide clarity and coherence, or to enhance style. Or writers take the opportunity to rethink their initial ideas and improve their drafts. For drafting, you might have an answer such as, writers generate text to develop points within the preliminary organizational structure, or writers make stylistic choices with language to achieve intended effects. Again, writing is a recursive process, and all of these activities go into it. We'll think about what the writer is trying to convey and what modes of writing he's using to convey his ideas. The title of our reading is In Search of Adventure. In my notes, I've written, on first glance, this looks like a narrative or a story. As we read, we'll find out that this is actually an expository, reflective essay with narrative elements. Let's read the story together. In Search of Adventure. Welcome to the Evergreen State, I read aloud. The sign flashed by. Everything I knew, all the connections I had made now lay halfway across the country. This was a new place, if not a whole new world. This was not my decision to pack up and pursue a new future. Are we almost there? My brother was impatient, but who could blame him after 3 days in a compact SUV? Only 90 more miles. Are you guys excited or what? My mother insisted the journey was almost over, but I knew that a new journey was only just a beginning. I was now an alien, an immigrant, a foreigner in search of a new home. In the margin, I made a note that this sounds like a moving story. We'll see. I had seen the shift from a barren, flat terrain to rocky outcrops and snow-capped mountains. Trees climbed ever higher, crowded by one another, jostling each other in the wind. Not much later, an unrolled window became a passageway for salt spray. For those who have grown up on the inhospitable frying pan of the Midwest, a land like Washington is absolutely alien. At this time, I was unnerved. The prospect of new beginnings was something I had yet to encounter in life, and was certainly not something I looked forward to. Fear loomed behind my fragile facade, ready to crash through whenever I was overcome by weakness. I made a note in the margin for this paragraph that says, geographic shift, reflecting the shift from past to present. We'll notice as we read this that the writer has used transitions such as this to reflect on what's happening now and in the past. Let's read on. Fear is a product of human existence. The irrationality of it is obvious, and yet it is something we find difficult to overcome. Many fear certain things, height, snakes, the dark, but my personal fear stems from uncertainty. Change is an idea that makes everyone uncomfortable, but no one believes that they fear change itself until they are confronted with it. There is rarely any physical danger associated with transition, yet we cling to the things we know like a thin lifeline, dangling over peril. My time to hide in the shadow of familiarity had passed, and it was time to run headlong into a new beginning. The sheltered life I had become accustomed to was exchanged for a small house in what seemed like the deep woods. different customs and lifestyles, progressive people. My fear was as irrational as any, but if anything, it was justified. So for that paragraph, I made some notes in the margin about the thesis. I've said, transition to thesis, fear as a part of life. What impact does it have? And I also wrote, this is starting to feel more like an expository, reflective essay. In addition to being a narrative, he is making some important points about fear as part of life. The writer's diction, especially imagery, helped to create a dramatic effect. Let's read on. At the time, I was resentful of my mother's decision, but tolerated it simply because I lacked the will to oppose it. Looking back, I'm extremely grateful for the choice she made. My entire future has been built on our proximity to the Puget Sound. I know I would have found a job in my home state, but it is difficult to imagine anything as fulfilling as casting off from a dock with no notion of when you will return. It would seem then that my experience with change is one wrought with irony. The same change I resented as a youth has evolved into a desire for adventure. Moving itself was not the key event in the whole of my life, but the fear I associated with it and the irrationality of it would resound in my subconscious for years to come. A shift in scenery such as this did much more than open my eyes to new possibilities. It also instilled in me that change is not something to fear. While the unknown may be unsettling, we must embrace it for all that it is, because only then can we take advantage of the boundless opportunity it offers. I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. My final note in the margin said, point well made. Something that caused fear led to opportunity he might have missed out on. These transitional clauses bring the reflection to its core insight. Now that we've read our student essay, we're going to analyze the writer's craft and style using soapstone. The soapstone strategy helps us assess a piece of writing by looking at the speaker, the occasion, the audience, purpose, the subject, and the tone. So as we go over these elements of the soapstone analysis, I invite you to compare these potential answers to the answers that you provided as you worked through the workshop on your own. First, who is the speaker? What can you infer about the speaker based on references in the text? You may have said something like, the speaker is young. He speaks of finding a job and of moving to a new state when he was somewhat younger, but not a lot. He speaks of moving with his family, and he speaks as if he is at the beginning of his adventure in life. What is the occasion? What are some of the circumstances, issues, or contexts that might have prompted the writer to craft this text? You may have said something along the lines of, the occasion seems to be reflective. He is writing about an important occasion in his life experience, and wants to communicate his insights. Who is the target audience? To whom is this text designed to appeal or reach and explain? Well, the audience seems very general in that he is pondering an incident that may be common to many and how it affected his attitude about life. It could be addressed to others who are young and in transition. What is the purpose? Why did the author write this text, and how might the writer want the audience to think about, or respond as a result of reading the text? You may have said something like, the writer offers this reflection in order to communicate his insights about the effects of a certain incident and attitude on his growing understanding of how his life is unfolding. Next, what is the subject? What is the writer's central idea, position, or main message about life, and what references from the text support your assertions? You may have said something along the lines of, the writer's central idea is that all of us face fears. In this particular situation, the writer says fear loomed. He was fearful of the uncertainty of change. He knows that fear is irrational, but it is still powerful. He ends by assuring readers that a fear of change should be abandoned. Instead, he says we must, quote, run headlong into a new beginning. We begin to embrace change to take advantage of the boundless opportunity it offers. What is the tone? What is the writer's attitude toward his or her subject? The tone in this essay is reflective and upbeat. The writer seems eager to communicate the shift in his attitude that led to his belief that life is an adventure that must be embraced. So that is the soapstone analysis. Think about how your analysis compared to the sample answers I've just gone over with you. Next in the workshop, we are asked to also identify transitional devices consisting of words, phrases, and clauses that help create coherence in an essay by helping the reader make sense of the writing. Remember that we are reading this from the perspective of a writer, and one of our learning targets is to improve coherence in our writing. I have said something along the lines of, the writer uses a number of narrative transitions, such as, at the time, not much later, and I was now. In addition, he signals the reflective nature of the writing with looking back. Moreover, complex sentences at the end of the essay signal a transition into a more complex thinking about the experience. That's really what makes the essay more of an expository, reflective piece of writing with narrative elements. Next, we're going to consider rhetorical devices used in this student sample of writing and consider the intended effects the devices have on the reader. Starting with figurative language, which refers to words or phrases that describe one thing in terms of another and are not meant to be taken literally. Examples from the student sample include, I was now an alien, an immigrant, a foreigner in search of a new home. For that, we may have described the intended effect on the reader as setting up a conflict between the sense of strangeness and familiarity. Another example would be to hide in the shadow of familiarity. The intended effect might be to create familiarity as a negative. Another example would be open my eyes to new possibilities, with the intended effect of creating a positive spin on experiences. Next, we'll consider diction, or the writer's choice of words, a stylistic element that helps convey voice and tone. Examples of diction from this piece of writing would include whole new world and fear was looming, which would create an intended effect of positive focus on the essay, as well as a sense of anxiety and fear. Another rhetorical device would be metaphor, which means a comparison between two unlike things in which one thing is spoken of as if it were another. This is a type of figurative language. An example would be when the writer refers to the inhospitable frying pan of the Midwest. That would create a striking image of the Midwest as perhaps hot and flat. Next, we have rhetorical question, which are questions that are asked for effect or for which the answers are obvious. We don't have rhetorical questions in this essay per se, but we can consider, would a rhetorical question have added to the effectiveness, and where could it have been used? For rhetorical question, we may have considered that rhetorical questions could have been used to invite the reader to consider individual life experiences. This writer seems to have achieved that without the use of rhetorical questions, but it would be interesting to see what would happen if he had. As we consider our learning targets related to conventions of standard English and language itself, let's look at syntactical variety, which refers to the variety of types of sentences and combinations of sentences a writer chooses to include in a text. Including certain types of sentences or arranging sentences in different ways affects the overall effect of the passage. So we will review sentence types and length. Sentence types include declarative, interrogative, exclamatory, and imperative. Declarative sentences make a statement, such as, "The king is sick." An interrogative sentence asks a question, such as, "Is the king sick?" An exclamatory sentence provides emphasis or strong emotion, such as, "The king is dead! Long live the king!" An imperative sentence gives a command, such as, "Cure the king!" Sentence lengths can be described as telegraphic, short, medium, and long. Telegraphic sentences are shorter than 5 words in length. Short sentences are approximately 5 words in length. Medium sentences are approximately 18 words in length, and long sentences are 30 words or more in length. Next, we have sentence styles, which include compound, simple, compound, complex, compound complex, and cumulative, periodic, and balanced. Simple sentences contain an independent clause, such as the goalie waved to his fans. Compound contains 2 independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction or by a semicolon, as in, the goalie bowed to his fans, but gave no autographs. Complex contains an independent clause and 1 or more subordinate clauses, such as, because the goalie was tired, he went straight to the locker room. Compound complex contains 2 or more independent clauses and 1 or more subordinate clauses, as in, the goalie waved while the fans cheered, but he gave no autographs and returned quickly to the locker room. A cumulative or loose sentence makes complete sense if brought to a close before the actual ending. We reached New York that morning after a turbulent flight and some exciting experiences, tired but exhilarated, full of stories to tell our friends and neighbors. A periodic sentence makes sense fully only when the end of the sentence is reached, as in, that morning, after a turbulent flight and some exciting experiences, we reached New York. A balanced sentence includes phrases or clauses that balance each other by their likeness of structure, meaning, or length, such as, meditation is to the mind what exercise is to the body. Sentence order can be natural and inverted. A natural sentence order would be involving a constructed sentence so that the subject comes before the predicate. As we consider learning targets related to conventions of standard English and language and its use in writing, we will look at syntactical variety, which refers to the variety of types of sentences and combinations of sentences a writer chooses to include in a text. Including certain types of sentences or arranging sentences in different ways affects the overall effect of the passage. We will review various ways to alter syntax and isolate areas of our draft to edit for sentence variety, length, style, and order. Sentence types include declarative, interrogative, exclamatory, and imperative. Declarative sentences make a statement, such as, "The king is sick." An interrogative sentence makes or asks a question, such as, "Is the king sick?" An exclamatory sentence provides emphasis on strong emotion, as in, "The king is dead. Long live the king." An imperative sentence gives a command, such as, "Cure the king." Sentence length can be telegraphic, short, medium, and long. Telegraphic refers to sentences that are 5 words or shorter in length. Short sentences are approximately 5 words in length. Medium sentences are approximately 18 words in length. And long sentences are 30 words or more in length. Sentence style includes simple, compound, complex, compound complex, cumulative, periodic, and balanced. Simple sentences contain one independent clause, as in, the goalie waved to his fans. A compound sentence contains two independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction or by a semicolon, as in, the goalie bowed to his fans, comma, but gave no autographs. Complex sentences contain an independent clause and one or more subordinate clauses, as in, because the goalie was tired, he went straight to the locker room. Compound complex sentences contain two or more independent clauses and one or more subordinate clauses, such as, the goalie waved while the fans cheered, comma, but he gave no autographs and returned quickly to the locker room. A cumulative or loose sentence makes complete sense if brought to a close before the actual ending. As in this example, we reached New York that morning after a turbulent flight and some exciting experiences, tired but exhilarated, full of stories to tell our friends and neighbors. Periodic sentences make sense fully only when the end of the sentence is reached, as in, that morning, after a turbulent flight and some exciting experiences, we reached New York. In a balanced sentence, the phrases or clauses balance each other by their likeness of structure, meaning, or length, as in, meditation is to the mind what exercise is to the body. Sentence order may be natural or inverted. A natural sentence order involves constructing a sentence so the subject comes before the predicate, as in, the group sat beside the swimming pool. An inverted sentence involves constructing a sentence so the predicate comes before the subject, as in, beside the swimming pool sat the group. This device is used to create an emphatic or rhythmic effect. The final part of Writing Workshop 1 asks us to write a couple of paragraphs in the style of the student example that incorporates our own uses of figurative language, diction, metaphor, and rhetorical question. I have written a short 2-paragraph story based on an actual experience from my own life, and I will share this with you as an example of a possible response to this last task. The day the man visited our 6th grade homeroom was a pivotal moment in my life. He had come to talk to us about joining the school band, something I don't remember ever thinking much about until that day. He had brought in several instruments to demonstrate: clarinet, flute, trumpet, trombone, snare drum, and alto saxophone. The sax struck me as a golden treasure, reflecting the sunlight coming in through the windows like rays of hope from on high. I knew this was the instrument for me and that I had to find a way to learn to play it. How would I ever make that happen? I knew that it would be expensive, but I still had hope. When I got home that evening, my mom noticed that I was quiet and asked me what was going on. I remember saying something like, "There's something I really want to do, but I know we can't afford it." She wanted to know more, so I told her more about the visitor to my class and about the impression this magical instrument had made on me. Even though I knew it would be expensive, I described as passionately as I could the intense feeling I had that this was the instrument for me. Much to my surprise, my mom and dad talked it over, looked at the rent-to-own rates for instruments provided by the band instructor, and agreed to let me give it a try. I couldn't believe it. They were going to let me follow my dream, and I had never been so excited. That was the beginning of my lifelong love affair with music. Today, I play guitar and write songs, but I still have my alto sax and play it occasionally. When I do, it takes me back to that first day when I first saw it, reflecting hopeful rays of sunlight. Think about your own response to this question and be aware of your own use of figurative language, diction, metaphor, and rhetorical question. I hope that Writing Workshop 1 has given you some good ideas about how to improve your writing. I hope everyone has a wonderful summer, and thank you for joining us.